Everyone knows the tower in Pisa, but hidden in a quiet German village, another tower leaned even farther. It does not rise from a famous cathedral square. It does not stand beneath crowds of tourists pretending to hold it up with their hands. It stands in Suurhusen, in East Frisia, where flat marshland, old brick, and a medieval church created one of Europe's strangest structural stories. At first glance, it looks modest, a village church tower, dark red brick, simple walls, and a roofline shaped by centuries of wind and rain. But then the eye notices what the body already feels. The tower is not straight. It is falling without falling. Its lean has been measured at about 5.19 degrees, a more dramatic angle than Pisa after modern stabilization. For years, Suurhusen became famous for a record that sounded almost impossible. A small German church tower had outleaned the most famous Leaning Tower on Earth. Yet the deeper story is not a contest with Italy. It is a story written underground, in soil, water, timber, and time. Because Suurhusen did not become extraordinary through ambition. It became extraordinary through a slow accident. The mystery begins in the landscape itself. East Frisia, a low, wet region shaped by marshes, canals, tides, and human attempts to control water. In places like this, the ground is never just ground. It is a living layer of mud, peat, moisture, pressure, and memory. Medieval builders understood the difficulty. To build on soft, wet land, they often relied on timber foundations, especially oak, which could remain stable when sealed beneath groundwater. Oak underwater can survive for centuries. The water blocks oxygen. The wood stays preserved, compressed, and protected below the masonry. This was the hidden bargain beneath Suurhusen. The tower could stand, as long as the water remained where it was. The church itself dates back to the medieval period, with the tower added in the 15th century, around 1450. To make room for the tower, the older church building was altered, and a heavy brick steeple was placed into a structure already rooted in difficult land. From the outside, the decision looks simple. A village needed a tower, a bell, a vertical sign of faith and community. But below the visible walls, the tower rested on a foundation system that depended on an invisible condition: constant groundwater. For generations, that condition held. The tower stood, the bells sounded, and the village life continued around it. Then came drainage, land management, and the long human campaign to make wet ground useful, dry, and controllable. As water levels changed, the oak foundation that had survived beneath the surface began to lose its protection. Once oxygen reached the old timber, preservation became decay. The very foundation that had carried the tower began to weaken. The tower did not collapse suddenly. It shifted slowly, almost silently, as the soil and timber beneath it changed their strength. That is what makes Suurhusen so cinematic. The danger is not a single disaster. It is a century-long movement measured in centimeters. By the 19th century, observers began to notice that the tower was no longer perfectly vertical. The lean became visible enough to transform a normal church into a structural riddle. Was it safe? Was it still moving? Could a medieval tower keep standing when the ground beneath it had already failed? The answer was not simple, because masonry behaves differently from modern steel. Brick does not bend gently. It cracks, compresses, shifts, and redistributes load. A leaning tower survives only if its center of gravity remains inside a zone where the structure can still transfer weight down into the foundation. In Suurhusen, the tower leaned dramatically, but not enough to abandon gravity completely. It balanced inside a shrinking margin of safety. This is why the image is so unsettling. The tower appears to be on the edge of motion, yet it has remained for generations. The village church became a lesson in how buildings can look impossible while still obeying physics with frightening precision. By the 20th century, the problem could no longer be treated as a charming curiosity. Measurements showed the overhang growing. and the tower's angle made the entire structure a concern for safety and preservation. In 1975, the church was closed to the public, a quiet admission that the old balance could not simply be trusted. For a medieval landmark, closure is more than a technical decision. It is a pause in the life of a place built for gathering. Then came stabilization efforts, exposing the hidden foundation problem and strengthening the tower so that it could remain standing. Engineers had to respect a paradox: save the tower without erasing the lean that made it historically unique. Straightening it completely would have destroyed the very evidence of its story. The goal was not to make Suurhusen ordinary again. The goal was to stop the movement while preserving the warning. After work in the 1980s and later safety measures, the tower was reopened and eventually stabilized. Today, its lean is part of its identity, not a flaw hidden from visitors, but the reason the world remembers it. And then came the comparison that changed everything: Pisa. Pisa is taller, older in fame, and surrounded by one of Europe's most recognizable architectural settings. Suurhusen is different. It is smaller, quieter, and almost hidden in the flat northern landscape. But measured by angle, Suurhusen's tilt reached about 5.19 degrees, surpassing Pisa's stabilized lean. In 2007, the tower gained international attention when it was recognized for its extreme unintended inclination. For a moment, the forgotten village tower stood above Pisa in the strange global hierarchy of buildings that should not look the way they do. But records change. Other leaning towers have since challenged or surpassed Suurhusen, depending on category and measurement. What remains is more important than a title. Suurhusen is one of the most powerful examples of accidental medieval engineering failures still standing in plain sight. Its story reveals that the most dangerous part of a building is sometimes the part no one can see. The bricks, roof, and bell openings attract the eye, but the real drama happened below the surface, where water once preserved timber and later abandoned it. This is why Suurhusen belongs in the Golden Atlas. It is not just a tower. It is a monument to hidden conditions. Every old structure is a negotiation with the ground. Some negotiate with rock, some with sand. Suurhusen negotiated with waterlogged earth. And when the terms changed, the tower began to tell the truth physically, leaning into the sky like a visible diagram of failure. There is also a human story here. Villagers, worshippers, builders, engineers, historians, and visitors all reading the same brick tower in different ways. To medieval eyes, the tower may have been a sign of faith and presence. To engineers, it became a warning about foundations and groundwater. To visitors, it is a visual shock, a small tower that somehow makes gravity feel uncertain. Unlike ruins that reveal destruction, Suurhusen reveals survival under stress. It did not vanish into the marsh. It did not collapse into legend. It remained, tilted but legible. That survival is what gives the place its strange elegance. The churchyard is quiet. The village is calm. The tower does not announce itself with spectacle. But the more carefully you look, the more the entire building becomes a question. How much can a structure endure before balance becomes memory? The answer is written in brick, oak, mud, and water. Suurhusen proves that a monument does not need imperial scale to become unforgettable. Sometimes the most haunting architecture is not the tallest or the richest, but the one that nearly lost its balance and stayed standing. Pisa became famous because the world saw its lean. Suurhusen became remarkable because almost no one expected a village tower to lean farther. And that is the secret at the heart of this place. History is not always found where fame tells us to look. Sometimes it waits in a quiet field, in a small church, in a foundation of rotting oak that changed the destiny of a tower. The forgotten tower that leaned farther than Pisa is not simply an architectural curiosity. It is a reminder that every monument stands on something fragile, and that the ground beneath history can move long after the builders are gone.